The night was alive with the kind of storm you only see on the Montana plains. Thunder cracking wide across the sky, rain streaking sideways, and the black highway glistening under Emily's trembling hands. Her wipers thudded uselessly, barely keeping up with the onslaught. She leaned forward, chin near the steering wheel, eyes darting to the empty road ahead. The clock on her dash glowed 11:49 p.m., but the darkness outside could have swallowed the world. She was alone, or so she thought. Emily gripped the wheel tighter, trying not to think about the voicemail from her ex-husband, the one she'd left behind in Minneapolis. "You need to let go, Emily." The words echoed inside her skull. She'd been driving west for hours, searching for something, relief, escape, maybe just a reason to keep going. Her reflection in the rearview mirror was drawn, eyes red-rimmed. She didn't recognize herself anymore. Lightning split the sky. Then, all at once, the world exploded with light. In the middle of her lane, a massive brown horse stood, utterly still. Its coat was slick with rain, steam rising off its flanks, and its eyes reflected the beams of her headlights with an eerie, golden steadiness. For a split second, Emily froze. Her mind tried to make sense of it, refused to believe it, then slammed the brakes. Tires shrieked, her car fishtailed. Somewhere behind her, another driver honked, then another, and the wet night filled with screeching rubber and cursing voices. She sat, breathless, the engine idling. Other cars edged up, headlights blasting through the rain. Someone shouted, "Get off the road!" The horse didn't move. It just stared at Emily, unblinking, nostrils flaring. Rain poured off its mane. It was like the animal had been waiting for her. Just her. For a wild moment she thought, "Is this real? Am I dreaming?" A pickup driver leaned out and yelled, "Is it yours, lady?" She shook her head. Her pulse thundered in her ears, louder than the storm. She reached for her phone, then stopped. The horse stamped once, hard, and swung its head as if beckoning. Its eyes, God, those eyes, never left her. Another bolt of lightning. In that blue-white flash, she saw its muscles bunch, saw the rain sheeting from its hide. Without thinking, Emily shoved her door open, stumbling out into the storm. She yanked up the hood of her raincoat, grabbed her flashlight from the glove box. The other drivers clustered together, cursing the weather, the traffic, this crazy woman chasing a wild horse at midnight. But Emily barely heard them. Something pulled her forward, a purpose or maybe desperation, but she followed the horse as it trotted off the asphalt and onto the prairie's muddy shoulder. Her boots squelched in the grass, water filling her socks. She swung the flashlight beam ahead, barely catching glimpses of the horse's flanks as he moved, always looking back, making sure she followed. The wind whipped her hair against her cheeks, cold and sharp. Emily's chest ached, but not from the run, from something deeper, a loneliness that had clung to her since the divorce, maybe even before. Out here, though, she didn't feel alone. She felt seen. Suddenly, the horse stopped dead by a sagging barbed wire fence. He whinnied, low and urgent, stomping the ground. Emily's flashlight swept over the grass, her heart pounding. The beam landed on something small, trembling in the muck. A foal, tiny, soaked to the bone, its legs twisted beneath a fallen fence post. The little horse was trapped, its sides heaving, eyes wide with terror. The big horse, the stallion, Emily realized, let out a frantic snort, circling the foal. He nudged the baby with his nose, trying to urge it up, but the post was pinning it down. Rain hammered the earth, thunder rolling above, the highway's chaos a distant memory now. Emily knelt beside the foal, her jeans instantly soaked. The fence post was heavier than she expected. "Easy, easy, it's okay," she whispered, voice shaking. Her hands slid in the mud as she tried to lift it, but the weight wouldn't budge. The stallion, his chest heaving, eyes wild, nudged her shoulder as if to help. She looked up. "Hang on, just let me try." The foal squealed. Emily bit her lip. "Don't cry, not now. Don't you dare break down," and dug her boots into the soft ground, bracing her back against the post. "Somebody help," she called, her voice cracking in the wind. The distant drivers finally realized what was happening. A man in a leather jacket sprinted over, sliding to his knees. Together they pushed, once, twice, on the third try. The post rolled off with a sucking noise, freeing the foal's spindly legs. The little horse lay gasping, too weak to stand. The stallion nudged it again, his massive body shielding them both from the rain. Emily cradled the foal's head, whispering, "It's okay. You're safe now." Tears mixed with the rain on her face. Around them, headlights shone through the storm. The strangers formed a circle, silent now, watching as something unexplainable unfolded before their eyes. The stallion, Dakota, she would later name him, lowered his head to Emily, eyes meeting hers in the darkness. In that instant, Emily felt something inside her shift. The cold, aching numbness of the last year cracked open, just a little, letting in the wild, uncertain hope of the night. As they waited for help, Emily kept her hand on the foal, feeling its heartbeat flutter against her palm. Dakota stood over them, vigilant, refusing to leave. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, a ranch truck, or maybe the local vet racing through the night. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, letting the storm wash over her. For the first time in months, she wasn't running from anything. She was right where she was supposed to be. And as the lightning faded and the prairie darkened once more, Emily realized, sometimes, the most unexpected encounters can lead us home. Emily's arms trembled as she held the foal close, the downpour turning the world into a blur of water and shadows. The strangers who'd helped her crowded around, one of them offering a jacket to shield the foal's tiny body. Someone called for a rancher. Someone else called the sheriff, then the nearest vet. But all Emily could focus on was the little horse shivering against her knees, and the big stallion, Dakota, standing guard, rain streaming from his powerful body, eyes unblinking in the storm. Sirens split the night, blue lights flashing across the highway. A battered animal control truck skidded to a stop, and Lisa, the local vet tech, leapt out with a bundle of towels and a medical kit. "Easy, easy," Lisa said, kneeling in the mud beside Emily. "Let's get this little one warm." Dakota whinnied, stamping the ground, as Lisa and her team loaded the foal onto a tarp and gently slid it into the back of the truck. He trotted after them, refusing to be left behind. When someone tried to shoo him away, he planted his hooves and glared, so intense that even the rancher shook his head. "Let him come. He's family. Or thinks he is." Emily scrambled up, her legs numb, and found herself running alongside the big horse, boots squelching, mud flying with every step. The drive to the ranch's stable was chaos. Lisa's headlights cut through sheets of rain, windshield wipers slapping frantically. In the back, Emily pressed her palm to the foal's heaving ribs, whispering, "Hold on, just a little longer." Dakota galloped beside the truck, his massive body a shadow in the lightning, hooves pounding the sodden ground. Emily couldn't take her eyes off him, his focus, his urgency, the way he never let them out of his sight. She'd never seen anything so fierce, so loyal. At the ranch, they rushed the foal into a straw-strewn stall, Lisa barking orders to her team. "Blankets, quick, and bring saline, she's dehydrated." Emily hovered in the corner, hands shaking, soaked to the bone. Dakota barreled into the barn behind her, ignoring the shouts of startled stable hands. He shoved his nose through the stall bars, eyes glued to the foal. For a while it was all adrenaline and panic. Emily fetched warm water, held syringes, did anything Lisa asked. The foal shivered, legs kicking weakly, and Lisa frowned, working fast, checking pulse, giving fluids, rubbing the tiny chest with rough towels. The storm hammered the tin roof, thunder shaking the rafters. Finally, after what felt like hours, the foal let out a ragged whinny and tried to stand. Lisa grinned, exhaustion and relief in her eyes. "She's a fighter. I think she'll make it." Dakota nickered softly, stretching his neck to nuzzle the foal through the bars. The gesture was almost human, so gentle that Emily felt her breath catch in her throat. When things calmed, Emily slumped onto a bale of hay, watching Dakota and the foal. Lisa sat beside her, passing over a thermos of hot coffee. "I've never seen anything like it. That big horse. He wouldn't leave her. Wouldn't leave you either." Emily stared at her muddy hands, at the crescent moon peeking through a break in the clouds. "He's got no brand, no halter. You ever seen him around before?" Lisa shook her head. "Nope, he's a mystery. I asked around. No one's missing a horse that looks like that. And he's not letting you out of his sight, you know." Emily glanced up. Dakota stood in the doorway, rain still dripping from his mane. His gaze locked on her. The barn was crowded. Ranchers, animal control, neighbors called in by the commotion. But Dakota only had eyes for her. He stood between her and anyone else who approached, muscles tense, every movement precise and deliberate. By sunrise, word had spread. The local paper sent a reporter. "Hero horse saves night." The headline would blare by noon. Kids showed up with their parents, pressing close to the stall to see the foal and the strange, wild stallion who'd become a hero overnight. Someone snapped a photo of Dakota with his muzzle pressed to the foal's tiny side. Emily blurry in the background, eyes wide with awe. The story traveled fast. On Facebook, on the radio, even on the early news. But Emily wasn't thinking about any of that. She only saw Dakota. She was supposed to be moving on, supposed to keep her distance, but his presence drew her in. Calm, powerful, endlessly patient. When she left the barn to call her sister, Dakota paced the fence line, waiting. When she came back, he trotted to her side, nudging her hand with his broad, wet nose. That evening, after the chaos faded, the sheriff and the rancher found Emily in the barn. "Nobody's claimed that horse," the sheriff said, hitching his belt. "You want to take him in, even for a few days, until we find his owner?" Emily hesitated, fear rising in her chest. She didn't want to get attached again. Not to anything. But Dakota stood beside her, pressing close, warm and steady as a mountain. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I'll look after him." The rancher smiled. "He picked you, that's for sure." Emily brought Dakota home to her tiny rented ranch on the outskirts of Great Falls. He followed her everywhere, through the gate, up the gravel path, even waiting outside the window as she unpacked a new blanket and poured oats into an old bucket. That first night, she sat on the porch, the storm a distant memory, Dakota standing silent in the moonlight. His presence was a balm, quiet, steadfast, never demanding, but always there. And for the first time in a long, lonely year, Emily let herself hope. Maybe this horse wasn't just lost. Maybe he was meant to find her. Dawn in Montana rolled in slow and golden, spilling over the endless prairie. Emily stood at her kitchen window, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of black coffee, watching the new day gather itself outside. For the first time in months, she wasn't filled with dread at the idea of another morning. Out by the old fence line, Dakota's massive brown shape moved easily through the mist, head down, grazing. It almost looked like he belonged there. Maybe, in some mysterious way, he did. Inside the barn, the foal, now nicknamed Willow by Lisa, shuffled restlessly on a bed of clean straw. Lisa had stopped by before sunrise to check the little horse's pulse, bandage her ankle, and rub her ears with practiced hands. "She's a strong one," Lisa said with a gentle smile. "But she's not out of the woods yet. I'll come back this afternoon." Emily watched as Lisa fussed over Willow, grateful for the younger woman's confidence and steady hands. "You ever think about keeping her?" Lisa teased. Emily only smiled, her heart aching a little. She wasn't ready to let herself love again, not even a horse. Still, she found herself drifting out to the barn over and over just to check. Willow nickered softly every time she heard Emily's boots on the planks. Dakota followed close behind, never letting his gaze wander from Emily for long. If Willow squeaked or thrashed, Dakota would stick his big head through the half door, nostrils flaring, snorting comfort. His eyes seemed to say, "I'm here. You're not alone." Days passed, stitched together by small routines. Coffee on the porch, feeding Dakota by hand, patching up a broken fence post with tools borrowed from her neighbor, old Mr. Greeley. At night, Emily would read by lamplight, her eyes drifting to the shadow at her window. Dakota always stood there, visible only as a shape in the darkness, watching over her. Sometimes, she woke from tangled dreams and saw him outside, moonlight turning his mane to silver, utterly silent. She'd catch herself talking aloud, murmuring to the horse as if he could understand. Some nights she even confessed things she'd never told a soul. About her brother, killed overseas years ago. About the failed dreams, the music school she never finished. The way her ex's words still echoed in her mind. "You're too soft, Em. You'll never make it alone." Dakota listened. Always. Sometimes he'd let out a soft, rumbly nicker, or bump her shoulder with his broad nose, grounding her in the present moment. With him, her solitude felt less like a burden and more like a chance to heal. Willow got stronger each day. Her legs steadied, her coat shone, and soon she tottered after Dakota in the little corral Emily had rigged beside the barn. Lisa stopped by with grain and a promise. "If you ever need help with her, just call. I'd take her myself if I could." Emily only nodded, heart tangled with hope and fear. Every so often, a neighbor would drop off apples or a bag of feed, or just stand at the fence to watch the horses graze. The story of the hero horse was still a hot topic in town. Strangers waved when Emily drove in for groceries, asking after Dakota and the miracle foal. The slow pace of ranch life began to seep into Emily's bones. She learned how to mend a broken latch, how to sweet-talk a stubborn gelding, how to shovel snow from the path at dawn. She fixed things she'd have called someone else for a year ago. There was comfort in it. The rhythm, the work, the sense that something depended on her. One afternoon, as autumn edged toward winter, Emily saddled Dakota for the first time. He stood absolutely still as she checked the old leather cinch and slipped her boots into the stirrups. "You ready, big guy?" she whispered. Dakota only flicked his ears. They ambled out toward the creek, Willow trailing behind them like a shadow. The air was crisp, scented with sage and dry grass. Emily let her mind drift, just letting the quiet seep in. As they reached the edge of the water, Dakota suddenly paused. He lowered his head, pawed at the muddy bank, and unearthed something buried in the dirt. A rusty old horseshoe, tarnished with age, yet oddly well preserved. Emily swung down, curiosity piqued. She brushed the mud away and squinted at the faded inscription. Tommy Dalton, 1944, she read aloud. The name sent a faint shiver up her spine. She turned it over in her hands, glancing at Dakota, who stood utterly still, ears pricked, as if listening for an answer in the wind. "Who's Tommy Dalton?" she murmured. The question hung in the golden afternoon, unanswered. But Emily couldn't shake the odd tingle of connection, as if the horse had guided her right to the clue on purpose. That night, she polished the horseshoe and placed it on her windowsill. Dakota watched her from outside, his eyes luminous in the moonlight. She found herself wondering about the past, about secrets lost to time, about the strange threads that seemed to be pulling her deeper into the fabric of this place. She didn't have all the answers. She still carried loneliness, fear, and old wounds. But with Dakota at her side, she no longer felt lost. Maybe, she thought, healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means finding new ways to move forward, piece by piece, morning by morning. And as she drifted to sleep, the last thing Emily heard was the steady, reassuring sound of Dakota's hooves outside her window, a heartbeat echoing her own, promising, "You're not alone." Emily couldn't shake the feeling that the horseshoe was more than just a relic. The inscription, Tommy Dalton, 1944, echoed in her mind all week. She found herself drifting toward the library after her supply runs into town, leafing through dusty archives, scrolling through old newspaper scans, hungry for some hint of the story behind the name. The small-town librarian, Mrs. Kearney, raised her eyebrows as Emily checked out an armload of local history books. "Got a research bug?" she asked with a kindly smile. Emily managed a soft laugh. "Something like that. I found a piece of someone's story out by the creek." Mrs. Kearney's eyes twinkled. "Well, out here, history's always closer than you think." Nights grew colder. Out at the ranch, Emily spent more and more time in the barn, tending to Willow and Dakota, poring over brittle pages by lamplight. She learned that Tommy Dalton was a cavalryman in the Second World War, a local kid who'd ridden out young, come back changed, and vanished one winter without a trace. A faded photo in the Historical Society's files showed Tommy in uniform, hand on the shoulder of a young woman labeled June Dalton, wife. Emily traced the names with her thumb, her curiosity growing sharper. There was something haunting in June's eyes, something she recognized, a loneliness maybe, or a hope that refused to die. One late afternoon, a biting wind sweeping in from the plains, Emily decided to visit the old Dalton homestead. Mrs. Turner, the next-door neighbor, waved her over as she pulled up. "You looking for the Dalton place? It's the old farmhouse past the cottonwoods, near the rise. Used to be a legend round here. June and her horse Bandit. They say he saved kids from a blizzard once. That Mustang could find anyone in a storm." Emily thanked her, heart beating fast, and led Dakota and Willow, now adopted by Lisa but visiting for the weekend, down the narrow dirt path, dry leaves swirling in their wake. The Dalton house stood silent, weather-beaten but proud. Windows gaped empty, porch boards sagged, but Emily felt the weight of history the moment she stepped through the gate. Dakota snorted, tossing his mane, and Willow pressed close to her hip. The barn creaked in the wind. A pair of crows took off from the old hayloft, their wings flashing blue-black in the slanting light. As Emily crossed the yard, Dakota's energy shifted. He pranced eagerly, tugging at the lead, nostrils flaring at familiar scents. At the far end of the barn, beneath a twisted cottonwood, she noticed a small, unmarked stone. Dakota lingered there, lowering his head, and Willow stood beside him, silent and respectful. Emily knelt, brushing dead grass from the stone. She felt the ache of unfinished business, of promises kept and broken. Her heart squeezed as she imagined June coming here, searching for her husband, whispering prayers to the wind. Inside the barn, shafts of light cut through broken boards. Dust motes danced. Dakota pawed at the ground, then trotted to the old hayloft ladder, stamping insistently. "What is it, boy?" Emily murmured, but her chest tightened with anticipation. She climbed the creaking ladder, wood groaning under her boots. At the top, the air was thick with memory. She swept her flashlight over piles of mildewed hay and rotted rope. Then something glinted in the shadows. It was a tin box, wedged behind a loose plank. Heart racing, Emily pried it loose and flipped open the lid. Inside, she found a faded photograph. A young woman, eyes shining with hope, holding a newborn foal in her arms. And beneath that, a letter, written in looping, old-fashioned script. "Dearest Tommy, if you find this, I've kept my promise. Bandit waits for you at the river bend, just as we planned. If you do not return, know that I never stopped hoping. The world may call us lost, but our love is a trail I'll never leave. Yours, always, June." Emily pressed her hand to her mouth. The raw longing in those words resonated deep within her. She recognized the ache of waiting, the stubbornness of love that refused to die no matter the years, no matter the pain. Down in the yard, Dakota whinnied, circling the barn and pausing by the cottonwood once more. Emily tucked the letter into her pocket, feeling the pulse of something bigger than herself. She remembered what Mrs. Turner said. Bandit, the legendary Mustang, who found children in blizzards and waited by the river bend. Was Dakota drawn to this place because of some memory older than either of them? Was he a stray, or was he here to finish someone else's story? She stayed there until sunset, the sky burning gold and purple, the wind rising cold off the plains. As she walked back to her truck, Dakota following, Emily felt the past pressing close, an old sorrow, but also a new sense of purpose. Maybe, she thought, healing wasn't just about her own wounds. Maybe she was meant to help finish this story, to give closure to the ghosts still wandering the prairie. That night, back at her kitchen table, Emily spread out the old photographs, the letter, and the horseshoe. Willow slept curled in the straw. Dakota watched through the window, his steady gaze anchoring her in the present. The story of Tommy and June unfolded in her mind, a love interrupted by war, a horse who waited by the river, a letter hidden for decades. Emily felt the ache of it, the longing, the hope. She whispered into the darkness, "I'll help you, June. I promise." And for the first time, her promise felt like something she could keep, not just for them, but for herself. Outside, the wind sang through the cottonwoods, carrying with it the quiet, persistent beat of hearts, both past and present, all waiting for their stories to be heard. The next morning dawned clear and sharp, the prairie shimmering with frost. Emily rose early, unable to shake the haunting beauty of June's letter from her mind. She poured herself a mug of strong coffee, hands cupped around the warmth, eyes fixed on the sunlit horseshoe and the fragile slip of paper that seemed to carry the weight of lost decades. Dakota stood outside her kitchen window, tail swishing, ears pricked. Emily felt a strange kinship with him, as if they were partners in an adventure that had only just begun. By midday, Lisa rolled up in her battered truck, Willow nickering from the back as she bounced with excitement. "I did some digging," Lisa said, holding out a manila folder. "Turns out, June Dalton's name pops up a lot in Old Town records. She bought extra feed every spring for years after Tommy disappeared. People said she'd ride that Mustang of hers all over the county, searching every river bend, every abandoned homestead. Emily's heart clenched at the thought. She spread the photos and letter across her kitchen table, eyes tracing the looping script, the hope woven into every word. "I found something else," she said softly, showing Lisa the horseshoe. Dakota led me to it. "There's a name. Tommy Dalton, 1944. It can't be a coincidence." Lisa's eyes widened. "You think he's connected to all this? That somehow Dakota found you because of the Daltons?" Emily shrugged, but there was a spark in her gaze that hadn't been there before. "I don't know, but I can't let it go. I feel like we're supposed to finish what June started." They spent the afternoon combing through the barn, looking for more clues. Emily pried at loose planks, swept dust from the hayloft, her pulse fluttering with every tiny discovery. A rusted spur, a crumpled ration card, a child's drawing of a horse labeled Bandit. With every new artifact, the story felt more urgent, more real. Dakota shadowed their every move, standing sentinel as the women worked. He'd nudge Emily gently whenever she grew frustrated, as if reminding her not to give up. Near sunset, Lisa found something wedged high in a roof beam, a tightly rolled scrap of parchment. Emily's hands shook as she uncurled it. An old, yellowed map. She squinted at the hand-drawn lines, the faded X marks, the cryptic notes scrawled in the margins. June's hope, Pine Grove, promise kept. The air between the women crackled with possibility. Before they could examine the map further, a hard voice cut through the barn's golden hush. "What do you think you're doing?" Emily spun, startled, to find a man in worn jeans and a dusty ball cap blocking the doorway. He was about her age, his eyes sharp and wary. Dakota's ears flattened as he stepped protectively between Emily and the stranger. Lisa stiffened. "Can we help you?" The man's jaw worked. "Name's Cole Dalton. This was my family's place, and I'd like to know why you're tearing it apart." Emily swallowed hard, suddenly self-conscious, but forced herself to meet his gaze. "I'm not here to take anything. I found a letter from your grandmother. She was waiting for Tommy. I just want to honor what she started, help tell their story." She held out the letter, hands trembling. Dakota stood motionless at her side, eyes never leaving Cole. Cole snatched the letter, scanning it with a furrowed brow. Something in his expression softened, just for a second, before hardening again. "You think you're the first person to come looking for lost Dalton gold? There's nothing here but ghosts." Emily's temper flared. "It's not about gold. It's about closure, about giving June and Tommy the ending they deserve." Cole hesitated, torn, then glanced at Dakota. The horse took a step forward, nostrils flaring, as if sensing the man's pain. Cole stared at Dakota, confusion flickering in his eyes. "That horse, he's not from around here. Why is he so interested in all this?" Lisa spoke up. "He saved a foal, saved Emily. He's got a nose for lost things. Maybe he's here to help you too." The barn fell silent. The three of them stood amid dust and fading sunlight, bound together by a mystery that felt bigger than all of them. Reluctantly, Cole nodded. "All right, show me what you found." They spread the map across a hay bale, tracing the lines by lantern light. Emily's finger hovered over an X labeled Pine Grove. Cole grunted. "That's back behind the old windbreak. No one's been out there in years." A plan began to form. Tomorrow, they'd follow the map, see where it led. Night fell thick and cold. Cole insisted on staying, claiming he didn't trust outsiders with his family's secrets. Emily sensed something else in his stubbornness, a fear of what they might uncover. Dakota slept outside her window again, a silent guardian. Lying awake, Emily felt both anxious and excited. She thought of June's promise, of Dakota's loyalty, of Cole's suspicion and pain. The past wasn't done with any of them. Tomorrow, she knew, would bring answers, or more questions. For now, she drifted to sleep, listening to the soft sounds of the ranch, the low murmur of the wind, and Dakota's steady breath, comforting, unwavering, reminding her that sometimes the only way to heal is to chase the truth, no matter where it leads. Cole and Dakota gathered at the edge of the old Dalton property. The mysterious map spread across the hood of Cole's battered truck. The pine forest loomed before them, dense and shadowy, the kind of place that seemed to swallow secrets whole. Emily's nerves hummed with anticipation and a trace of anxiety. She glanced at Dakota, who nuzzled her shoulder, as if to say, "You're ready for this." Cole was silent as he loaded a backpack with water and snacks. He glanced at Emily and Lisa, his jaw set, but something in his demeanor had changed. There was still suspicion there, but beneath it, curiosity too. "The diary you found. Let me see it again." Emily handed it over. Cole flipped through the brittle pages, frowning at the looping, coded script. "My grandma June wrote in code when she was upset. That's how she kept her secrets safe." Lisa grinned. "Then we're lucky to have you." For a moment, the tension eased, and Emily felt hope flicker. Maybe, just maybe, this strange team could finish what June and Tommy started. They set off along a narrow path, Dakota leading the way, Willow prancing behind. Sunlight dappled through the trees, birds chattered overhead, and the crunch of leaves underfoot became their soundtrack. Emily walked beside Cole, the air between them thick with unsaid things. "You must have loved this place growing up," she said quietly. Cole shrugged. "It was home. But after Grandma died, I just couldn't come back. Too many memories, too many rumors. People always looking for buried treasure, never caring about the truth." Emily nodded. "I know how that feels." She thought of her brother, her lost marriage, all the stories people told about her that never quite fit. Dakota glanced back, his eyes gentle, and Emily felt braver. They reached the edge of the pine grove by midday. Dakota stopped, ears pricked, nostrils flaring. Cole checked the map. "According to this, we're close to the first marker." Lisa scanned the ground, then called out, "Over here!" She knelt by an old tin lunchbox, half buried beneath tangled roots. Cole pried it open, revealing a bundle of black and white photos, 2 war medals, and a child's drawing of a wild horse under a swirling sky. At the bottom lay a battered, leather-bound diary. Cole's hands trembled as he picked it up. He opened to the first page, June's neat handwriting, then a sudden sprawl of numbers and letters. "It's her code," he whispered. Emily touched his arm, offering silent support. "Take your time." Cole read aloud, voice shaking, as June chronicled her search for Tommy, her grief, her hope, her conviction that love would somehow lead her to answers. Dakota shifted, snorting, then ambled to a patch of ferns. With a sudden stamp of his hoof, he uncovered an overgrown, almost invisible trail. Cole's eyes widened. "I remember this path. Grandma used to take me here as a kid. Said it was our secret adventure." He looked at Emily, the old bitterness softening. "Guess she was preparing me for this all along." They followed Dakota through the underbrush, deeper into the forest. Shadows thickened, and the air grew cool and earthy. Every few steps, Lassa or Emily spotted another sign, a rusted horseshoe nailed to a stump, a faded ribbon fluttering from a branch. It was as if June had left breadcrumbs for them to follow, decades before. Suddenly, Emily heard voices, low, gruff, just ahead. She signaled for the others to stop. Peering through the brush, they spotted a man in camo gear, digging near a tree with a metal detector. "That's Wade," Cole muttered. "Local treasure hunter. He's been obsessed with Dalton rumors for years. We can't let him find anything. He'd sell it all for cash." Lisa scowled. "Let's double back. Keep quiet." They slipped away, Dakota moving with surprising stealth for such a large animal. Emily's heart hammered. The stakes felt real now. This wasn't just a personal journey. Others were circling, eager to claim whatever secrets June and Tommy left behind. They pressed on until the path ended at a wide, mossy clearing. At its center stood a massive cottonwood, its roots twisting deep into the earth. Cole consulted the diary, deciphering a line of code. "Where the river bends and the cottonwood stands guard, look beneath." Emily knelt by the roots, running her fingers through the damp earth. Her pulse quickened as she uncovered a small, weathered lockbox, nearly invisible against the gnarled wood. Before she could open it, a branch snapped behind them. Wade stepped into the clearing, eyes glittering with greed. "Well, well, looks like you found something for me." He moved toward Emily, but Dakota charged between them, teeth bared, a deep, rumbling whinny in his chest. Wade stumbled back, hands raised. "Easy, beast!" Cole stepped forward, voice hard. "This is our family's history. Leave or I'll call the sheriff." Wade sneered but retreated, muttering curses as he disappeared into the trees. Breathless, Emily opened the lockbox. Inside, she found another bundle of letters, Tommy's handwriting, full of longing and regret, plus June's wedding ring and a photograph of the two lovers by the river, smiling as if no time could ever touch them. Tears blurred Emily's vision. She pressed the ring into Cole's palm. "Your family deserves this." The moment felt sacred. Closure for a lost love. Resolution for a family haunted by secrets. Dakota nuzzled Emily's shoulder, his eyes soft as if to say, "You did it." The group lingered in the clearing, the past and present braided together in the cool, fragrant air. Emily sensed they were not just uncovering old memories. They were healing wounds, binding themselves to something bigger than any one person. As they walked back toward the ranch, letters and diary safe in hand, Emily looked at her friends, at Cole's newfound pride, Lisa's bright smile, Dakota's noble stride, and felt the truth settle deep inside her. The journey wasn't over, but for the first time she was certain they were on the right path, together. The world felt changed as they emerged from the pine forest. Cottonwood roots still damp on Emily's fingertips, and the lockbox pressed tightly against her chest. She watched Cole tuck June's coded diary and the bundle of Tommy's letters into his backpack, handling them with the reverence of a son returning from war. Wade's threat lingered in the air, a shadow that made every snapping twig sound like danger, every gust of wind a whisper of someone closing in. They didn't linger at the ranch. Instead, Cole led them straight toward the river, the place described in the diary's cipher, a spot known only to June and Tommy. Dakota moved at Emily's side, ears forward, muscles taut. Emily was tense, heart racing. She felt the weight of the past and the urgency of the moment, like all of Montana was holding its breath. They followed the map through a tangle of willows, boots squishing in the soft ground. Lisa moved quietly, scanning the brush for signs of Wade or anyone else. Cole barely spoke, jaw set, eyes fixed on the winding path. The river appeared suddenly, sunlight glinting off its surface, and Dakota paused, nostrils flaring, before striding down to the bank. "Here," Cole said, breathless. "This is where Grandma always said she'd meet Tommy." She told me stories about this cottonwood, said it guarded her hopes. Emily knelt beneath the great tree, the grass cool and fragrant, the river a soft roar in her ears. Dakota circled her, stamping at the earth, then pawed insistently at a patch of mud tangled with wildflowers. Emily dug with her bare hands, mud caking under her nails until her fingers struck wood. She glanced up. Lisa's eyes were wide, Cole pale with anticipation. Suddenly, a branch snapped behind them. Wade burst from the brush, red-faced and wild-eyed. "Back off!" he barked. "That box belongs to me!" He lunged, but Dakota surged forward with a furious whinny, ears pinned, teeth bared. The horse planted himself between Emily and Wade, muscles bunching, his presence alone enough to freeze Wade mid-step. "Get out of here!" Cole yelled, stepping in front of Lisa and Emily. "This is our family's legacy. Sheriff's on his way, unless you want more trouble." Wade hesitated, looking from Dakota's bared teeth to Cole's defiant glare, then spat into the grass. "You're all fools, chasing ghosts. There's nothing here worth a damn." Still, he backed away, fists clenched, and finally turned and crashed through the undergrowth, cursing as he went. The tension in the air snapped, like a storm breaking. Emily slumped in relief, wiping sweat from her brow. Dakota let out a satisfied snort and nudged her gently, as if to say, "It's over now." With trembling hands, Emily lifted the small, dirt-stained box from the earth. Its brass hinges creaked as she opened it. Inside, carefully wrapped in faded oilcloth, were Tommy's letters, each page yellowed and soft at the edges, the ink smudged by tears and time. A worn wedding band nestled among them, and beneath, a photograph of Tommy and June, arms wrapped around each other, faces radiant, a love undiminished by war or years apart. Cole sat down heavily in the grass, the weight of the discovery sinking in. Lisa moved to his side, offering silent comfort. Dakota pressed his broad head against Emily's back, his warmth grounding her in the present. Emily read the first letter aloud, her voice trembling. "Dearest June, if you find this, know that I never stopped loving you. The war changed me, but my heart always belonged to you. I'm sorry for the pain I brought you, for the nights you waited by this river. I wanted to protect you from my ghosts, but all I did was leave you lonely. Forgive me, and remember the love that brought us together. Let it carry you forward." As the words hung in the air, Cole wept quietly, Lisa holding his hand. Emily felt her own eyes burn. For so long, the Dalton family's story had been one of absence, of questions that never found their answers. But now, in this soft golden light, surrounded by friends and the ever-watchful Dakota, it became a story of hope and forgiveness. After the speeches, people lingered, sharing their own stories, pointing out faces in old photos, retelling the legend of Bandit and the Blizzard, of June's endless hope. Veterans stood with hands on hearts as Cole displayed Tommy's medals. Kids traced the lines of the map, their imaginations fired by mystery and discovery. For a moment, the old Dalton sorrow was transformed into something new, a pride, a kinship, a reminder that every person in the room had known some kind of loss and found a way to keep going. The story of Dakota spread beyond Great Falls. A reporter from Helena called, asking for an interview. School teachers invited Emily and Lisa to speak in classrooms about Montana history, about love and resilience, about how the past can shape and heal the present. The Historical Society put up a plaque at the Dalton homestead, and the town council announced plans for a community garden, a living memorial for June, Tommy, and all who wait, and all who find their way home. As autumn sunlight slanted through the trees, the garden project began. Emily, Cole, Lisa, and dozens of neighbors gathered at the Dalton place, clearing brush, planting wildflowers, building benches beneath the cottonwood where Dakota had stood his ground. Children ran between the rows, laughing, racing the wind, while Dakota watched serenely, allowing even the shyest kids to stroke his nose and feed him sweet grass. In the evenings, Emily would walk the garden's winding paths, her hand trailing through sun-warmed blossoms, Dakota always a few steps behind. She found comfort in the routines, watering seedlings, tending roses, hearing the voices of friends carried on the breeze. One night, as the sun dipped low and painted the prairie in gold, Cole approached her by the riverbank. "You did something special here, Emily," he said, voice rough with emotion. "You could have left after that night on the highway, but you stayed. You gave my family and this town something we didn't even know we needed." Emily shook her head. "I think Dakota did most of it. I just listened." Cole smiled, glancing at the horse. "He listens better than most people I know." They stood in silence, the river whispering beside them, the first stars blooming overhead. Emily realized then that she was no longer an outsider. The pain of her old life hadn't vanished, but it had been woven into something larger, stitched together by courage, memory, and the gentle persistence of a horse who'd refused to give up on her. That night, as she walked home through the fields, Dakota's steady presence at her side, Emily looked up at the cottonwood and whispered a silent promise: to keep listening, to keep reaching, and to let hope grow wherever it would take root. The golden light of early October spread across the Dalton homestead, painting the new community garden in hues of honey and amber. Everywhere flowers bloomed, wild prairie asters, yellow sunflowers, roses climbing the old fence, their petals trembling in the crisp breeze. It was the kind of day that made everything feel possible, the pain of winter a distant memory, the promises of summer fulfilled at last. Emily stood near the cottonwood, her hands brushing the carved plaque that read, "For those who waited and the hearts that led them home." All around, neighbors and friends gathered, ranchers with sunburned faces, teachers and school children, veterans in old uniforms, families holding hands. Dakota grazed quietly nearby, his broad back shining in the sunlight, an easy target for the children's gentle hands and whispered awe. Cole stood beside Emily, his posture straighter than she'd ever seen, a sense of peace radiating from him that she'd never thought possible in their first tense meetings. Lisa mingled with the crowd, laughing as she directed a group of kids to plant wildflower seeds near the riverbank. The garden was more than a patch of earth. It was a living testament to the resilience of love and the power of community. It was, Emily thought, proof that the past could be healed if enough hands and hearts were willing to try. When it was time for the dedication, Emily found herself standing at the makeshift podium, Dakota's warm breath against her shoulder. Her notes trembled in her hands, but the eyes of friends, old and new, steadied her. "I never meant to stay in Montana," she began, her voice quiet but strong. "When I came here, I was lost, hurting, alone, running from things I thought I could never face. But then one stormy night, I met Dakota. He stood in the road like he was waiting just for me. He didn't flinch or run. He just looked at me until I was brave enough to get out of my car and follow him into the rain." She paused, her voice thickening with memory. "That night, we saved a foal together. But I think maybe I was the one who was rescued. Dakota didn't just lead me to Willow, or to this town, or to the story of June and Tommy Dalton. He led me back to myself, piece by piece, by teaching me the simple courage of showing up for someone else, even when it's hard. The crowd was silent, every ear tuned to her words. Emily glanced down at Dakota, who met her gaze, steady and unblinking. We uncovered clues: a horseshoe with Tommy's name, a letter from June hidden in the hayloft, a diary written in code. Each piece was a gift from the past, but it was the journey, the people I met along the way, that gave them meaning. I learned that healing isn't about erasing pain, but about finding ways to share it, about building bridges between the wounds we carry and the hope we can offer each other. Her eyes swept the crowd. She saw Lisa with Willow at her side, Cole with the wedding ring on his finger. Children clustered around Dakota. Cole, thank you for trusting me with your family's story. Lisa, for believing in second chances. And to everyone here, thank you for showing me what it means to belong, not just to a place, but to a community that isn't afraid to remember, to grieve, and to grow. She drew a trembling breath, her words gathering force. Dakota isn't just a horse. He's a bridge between what was lost and what was found. He reminded us all that sometimes the right companion shows up just when you need them most, not to fix everything, but to walk beside you as you find your own way forward. I believe that's what legacy really means. It's not the things we leave behind in stone, but the stories we choose to honor, the compassion we share, and the courage to face the hard things together. A hush settled over the crowd, followed by a ripple of applause that grew and swelled, rolling through the garden like a blessing. Tears streaked Cole's cheeks as he took Emily's hand. Lisa dabbed her eyes, Willow nuzzling her hip. After the speeches, veterans stood in a silent line, laying small flags near the cottonwood, saluting the memory of Tommy and June. The townsfolk moved through the garden, planting wildflowers and telling stories of lost loved ones, of old hurts and new hopes, of the way the land itself seemed to heal as they worked. Children placed painted rocks along the path, each one inscribed with a wish or a memory. Emily wandered through the garden, her heart full. Everywhere she looked, she saw the legacy of kindness: a hand on a shoulder, a shared laugh, a tear wiped away. She found Cole kneeling by the river, holding his grandmother's ring, eyes closed as if listening for her voice in the wind. She found Lisa sharing the legend of Bandit and the blizzard with a group of wide-eyed children. And she found Dakota, standing quietly at the edge of the garden, head bowed, as a little boy pressed his forehead to the horse's nose, whispering secrets meant only for them. As the sun dipped low, Emily gathered with her friends under the cottonwood. She pressed her hand to Dakota's strong neck, feeling the steady thump of his heart. For the first time since she could remember, she felt truly at peace. Not because her pain had vanished, but because it had become part of a bigger story, stitched together by love, memory, and the courage to begin again. The crowd joined hands, forming a wide circle, and together they sang an old song. One about journeys, about homecomings, about never giving up on those you love. The garden glowed in the fading light, wildflowers blooming where sorrow once took root. And as twilight settled, Emily knew that the story she'd helped uncover would never really end. It would grow, season by season, in the hearts of everyone who'd gathered, living proof that what we share, what we honor, and who we walk beside matters more than anything we leave behind. Months slipped by, and the Dalton Memorial Garden flourished, sunflowers and wild roses spilling over their borders, tall prairie grasses waving in the gentle Montana wind. The garden became the heart of the community, a place where memory and hope mingled with every passing season. On weekends, families wandered the winding paths, reading the names on painted stones, listening for the laughter of children weaving through the cottonwood shade. Emily found her life changing in ways she'd never imagined during that stormy night when Dakota had first appeared in her headlights. Now she wasn't just a visitor to Montana. She was a part of its story, her roots digging deeper with every day she spent on the land and with the people who had welcomed her so openly. Her ranch, once a place of quiet loneliness, was full of voices and life. Neighbors stopping by for coffee, children coming to visit Dakota, veterans sharing stories by the fire pit in the evenings. It was during the first Memory Day at the garden, a new tradition born from the Daltons' journey, that Emily realized how much had changed. People arrived with bouquets and old photographs, planting wildflowers in honor of lost loved ones, and sharing memories beneath the autumn sky. Dakota, older now, stood calm as ever in the center of the garden, letting children braid daisies into his mane and stroke his velvety nose. He had become a legend in the town, a symbol of healing, loyalty, and the strange magic that can bloom from unexpected friendship. Emily watched from the edge of the garden, her journal open on her lap. She wrote, pausing now and then to let her gaze wander to Dakota and the crowd. "Healing doesn't erase the scars," she wrote, "but it gives them meaning. We are not the same as we were, but maybe we're something better, wiser, more open, grateful for every moment, every lesson, every companion who helps us along the way." Children ran through the wildflowers, laughter echoing, and Dakota watched over them as if he understood their joy. Emily's eyes stung with gratitude as she watched the shyest boy in the group, little Sam, whose father had died that spring, lean into Dakota's side, finding comfort in the steady warmth of the old horse. It was a scene she would never forget, the small hand on a big, trusting animal, and the quiet connection that needed no words at all. As Memory Day continued, Emily spoke with parents, teachers, and old-timers, listening to stories and sharing her own. She realized that every act of rescue, every effort to reach out, to mend, to listen, wove her life into a greater tapestry. Each story, she told a gathering of children, is a thread in something bigger. If we keep sharing them, we build a web of support that nothing can break. Not loneliness, not grief, not even time. Dakota's story was far from over. Inspired by the way he soothed both adults and children, Emily began training him as a therapy horse, visiting local schools and elder homes. The gentle giant, once lost and nameless, now brought peace to veterans struggling with old wounds, to children missing their parents, to widows and newcomers alike. Emily watched as Dakota nuzzled trembling hands and let tears fall onto his mane, always steadfast, always accepting. She saw how the horse who had led her into the storm now led so many others through their own pain toward healing. Cole and his family also found new beginnings. The pain and shame that had haunted the Daltons for generations faded as the community embraced their story, not as a tale of loss, but as a testament to love, courage, and the power of hope. Cole taught his children to honor the past with pride, showing them the garden, the river, and the cottonwood where Tommy and June's love had finally come home. Every autumn, the family gathered at the memorial, sharing stories old and new, weaving their own legacies into the land. Emily's home became a sanctuary, open to anyone who needed it. She kept a pot of coffee on the stove, a plate of cookies on the counter, and a willingness to listen. Sometimes, late at night, she'd walk the garden paths alone, Dakota at her side, and whisper her own worries and wishes to the wind, trusting now that she was heard. On the anniversary of that first fateful night, the town gathered once more beneath the cottonwood. Emily stood before the crowd, her friends, her neighbors, people who had become her family. The garden glowed with late-blooming wildflowers, the air full of possibility. She spoke with clear conviction, her voice carrying through the hush. "Let the stories that shaped you guide you," she said. "Rescue what is lost, not just animals or artifacts, but hope, trust, the parts of yourself you thought were gone forever. Be the listener, the guide, the safe place for others. That is how we heal together, and how we build a future worth believing in." The applause rolled over her like a warm embrace, and as Dakota stood beside her, Emily felt the truth settle into her bones. Legacy was not the things you leave behind, but the love you inspire, the connections you nurture, the hope you refuse to let die. After the crowd drifted home, Emily lingered beneath the cottonwood, Dakota's breath soft on her shoulder. The garden glowed in the twilight, wild with life. She traced the lines of the old horseshoe she kept in her pocket, a reminder of the night everything changed, and felt peace, deep and abiding. The future, she knew, would hold new storms, but whatever came, she was not alone. She would face it all with the strength of the land, the courage of her friends, and the steady, guiding spirit of a horse who had become so much more than a legend. And as the stars came out, one by one, bright and steady over the prairie, Emily smiled, ready for whatever journey lay ahead.